Dungeon Master Studios here. How y'all doing? So, something that happened pretty early on during the events of Dragons Rising is Lloyd becoming a conduit for the Source Dragons, which obviously resulted in him gaining the ability to see visions of the future. However, as a lot of you longtime Ninjago fans probably know, Lloyd is not the first member of the ninja team who had this ability, because back in the day, Zane was actually the member of the team who had the ability to see into the future. And in today's video, I want to take a look at the various visions that Zane has got over the years, and take a look at them in order to see what each of them represent when it comes to the show. So, let's get into this whole thing. So the first time we ever see Zane having a vision is during the 4th episode of Season 1, where, during this episode, we see the Falcon talking to Zane, at which point Zane then wakes up, revealing that the whole thing was just a dream. He then goes out to talk to Wu and Nia, who are acting a bit weird, at which point Zane then goes up to the main part of the bounty, where he's then ambushed by Garmadon. However, the Green Ninja shows up, and he and Garmadon fight against each other. Zane then wakes up from this, revealing that this entire sequence was all just one big dream. However, this entire scene was also one big vision, showing us things that would eventually end up happening later on during the events of Season 1 and Season 2. For starters, we have the Falcon talking to Zane, and this is meant to act as foreshadowing for what Zane would eventually learn during the episode TikTok, because that episode ended up revealing the origins of Zane and that Zane was actually a robot. But when it comes to the Green Ninja and Garmadon fighting against each other, this is also pretty significant, as this relates into numerous things that we would actually end up seeing during the show. For starters, the Green Ninja and Garmadon fighting against each other is meant to tie into the prophecy that we learned during the first episode of the season, that the Green Ninja would defeat the Dark Lord, and that is exactly what we saw at this moment. Now, granted, as we learned during the season, the Dark Lord actually refers to the Overlord. However, the Overlord ended up possessing Garmadon, so the idea of the Green Ninja fighting against Garmadon is something that we would eventually see during Season 2. Additionally, though, when it comes to this moment, we also see the Green Ninja possessing attributes of the original 4 Ninja. And this actually connects into two major things. For one, this moment is meant to represent the idea that any of the original 4 Ninja could potentially become the Green Ninja, because again, we see the Green Ninja possessing attributes of the original 4 Ninja. We see the Green Ninja lifting up a heavy crate representing Cole. We see the Green Ninja using the nunchucks of lightning representing Jay. We see the Green Ninja using fire powers representing Kai. And we see the Falcon being perched on the arm of the Green Ninja representing Zane. However, that's not it, because when it comes to the Green Ninja possessing all these attributes of the original 4 Ninja, this does end up happening later on during the show, because as we learn, Lloyd is the one who's going to become the Green Ninja, and he does go on to possess attributes of the original 4 Ninja, specifically when it comes to the original 4 Ninja and them unlocking their true potentials, and how when it comes to the ninja unlocking their true potentials, all of these things would relate into Lloyd and what he went through in some way or another. The Green Ninja episode of Ninjago Decoded does a really great job at looking at this, and I highly recommend that you go and check that out if you haven't, because it does a genuinely much better job at explaining how the true potentials relate into Lloyd's character better than I ever could. But again, when it comes to the Green Ninja, it's meant to represent how any of the original 4 Ninja could become the Green Ninja, but it also represents how the Green Ninja would essentially end up being like the original 4 Ninja, which I think is honestly something really interesting. And really, when it comes to this entire sequence that we end up getting with the Green Ninja and him fighting against Garmadon, this entire scene is meant to act as one gigantic amount of foreshadowing, showing us events that would eventually play out later on during Seasons 1 and 2. Moving on to Season 4 though, this is where things get interesting, because during Season 4, we once again see Zane having visions. However, these visions don't show him the future, but instead, these visions are meant to represent Zane's fears and his current mental state. All throughout the events of Season 4, we see Zane having visions of the Titanium Dragon, and we see that Zane is really, really scared of the dragon. And as we learned during the season, the dragon is meant to represent Zane's fears, specifically when it comes to Zane being in a brand new body. At the end of Season 3, we saw Zane sacrificing himself, but we also saw him building a brand new body for himself. And during Season 4, we see Zane being in his new body. However, as a result of Zane being in a new body, he's not sure what that means for him and whether or not he's still the same person that he was. Is he still the same Zane, or is he a different Zane because he's in a new body? And this eventually leads Zane into a full-blown existential crisis because he's not sure about who he even is anymore. However, after he opens up to Pixel and he talks about what's going on, Zane is finally able to face his fears and he's able to embrace his identity as the Titanium Ninja, with him knowing that even though he's in a new body, that doesn't change anything about who he is as a person, thus allowing Zane to conquer his fears, and the Titanium Dragon no longer scares him, and not only that, Zane is even able to summon the Titanium Dragon and he's able to ride him around in combat. And by sharing this information with the other elemental masters that they need to face their fears, they're all able to unlock dragon power, thus allowing them to get off of Chen's island, and they're able to fight back against Chen and his forces. And so when it comes to Zane's visions this time around, again, while they don't show him the future, instead they represent Zane's mental state and the way he's feeling, specifically when it comes to his fears surrounding him being inside of a brand new body, with Zane being unsure about what this means for him. Finally, though, this brings us to Season 11, and what's interesting about this season is that Season 11 actually combines what we saw with Zane's visions during Season 1 and Season 4. Because during Season 11, Zane's visions both foreshadow events that will happen later on during the season, but they also represent Zane's fears and his current mental state. When it comes to the visions foreshadowing events that will happen, this is something that we get all throughout the events of the Fire chapter, with Zane having numerous visions showing him events that will happen later on during the Fire chapter as well as during the Ice chapter. With Zane seeing stuff like Asphira showing up at the monastery and her sending him to the Netherrealm, the Pyro Vipers attacking Ninjago City, the Ice Emperor taking over the Netherrealm, the Eternal Winter, and more. A lot of things that we get with Zane's visions are meant to foreshadow events that will eventually end up happening later on during the season. But something that's interesting is that when it comes to a lot of visions that Zane ends up getting, they don't fully represent the future. And when it comes to some of these events, while they do happen, they don't happen the way that Zane sees them. Like, for example, initially when Zane sees Asphira sending him to the Netherrealm, we see that Zane is really scared about this. And later on, Zane has another vision where we see Asphira attempting to send Zane to the Netherrealm, but Zane is able to get out of the way of the magic blast. However, when Zane is sent to the Netherrealm, he isn't scared, and instead, Zane willingly sacrifices himself in order to protect Sensei Wu from the magic blast. Similarly, during the first episode, at the end of Zane's first vision, we see all of the ninja being frozen in ice. However, by the time Season 11 comes to an end, Lloyd is the only member of the team who was actually frozen in ice, while everyone else was fine. In fact, Kai was even able to prevent himself from getting frozen in ice by protecting himself from Boreal's ice breath. And I feel like when it comes to these moments, with Zane seeing certain events, but they don't play out the way he actually saw them, I feel like this is meant to represent Zane's fears and his current worries about what's going on, with him not being too sure about what is going to happen in the future and him being worried about himself and the other members of the team. But with the actual events changing and them not going down the way that Zane saw them, I feel like this is meant to represent Zane becoming more confident in himself and the other members of the ninja team, and him being sure that everything is going to work out fine no matter what happens, and him essentially no longer fearing his visions, but instead finding a way to work through them and overcome them. So even though the future does end up happening the way that Zane saw them, it doesn't go down the exact way that he saw them, with Zane knowing that there are ways to change the future, and he's not going to let his fear control him, which is something that I do think is honestly really interesting. Now, granted, that is just my own interpretation of these events, because it's never been outright said why Zane's visions don't play out the exact way that he did saw them, although I do feel like it is a possibility that when it comes to the visions changing, that does come as a result of Zane becoming more confident in himself and the rest of the team. And so that's pretty much all I got for you guys. When it comes to Zane's visions, even though we didn't get them that much during the original era of the franchise, I still think that Zane's visions are something that are legitimately really interesting to see, especially considering what they end up representing during the seasons that they're actually in. And I honestly think that when it comes to Dragons Rising, it would be a really big missed opportunity if Zane having visions is something that was never touched on at any point during the season. While I'm not entirely sure if we are going to see Zane having another vision at some point during Dragons Rising, although personally I would really like that and I think it would be interesting, I feel like it would make a lot of sense if Zane getting visions of the future is something that, at the very least, was referenced during Dragon's Rising. Because even though Lloyd is the one who's getting visions of the future now, remember, Zane was the first member of the team who had this ability. And I feel like if all throughout Dragon's Rising, Zane also being able to see the future is something that was never brought up once, I feel like that wouldn't really make a lot of sense. Hopefully it's something that happens, but we're just gonna have to wait and see. And so that's pretty much all I got for you guys. So tell me down below, what do you guys think? Tell me what are your guys' thoughts when it comes to Zane's visions, and tell me, was there anything that I left out during this analysis? Again, tell me down below, and I hope you guys enjoy. Later, guys, this is Dimension Master Studios, signing off.